Good morning. I hope your Sunday is off to a great start. This morning, we're going to look back and relive some interesting moments from three previous guests. We'll talk about baseball, beer, and a very unique cap. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, this morning I want to again share part of some conversations we had with three previous guests, including a businessman, a historian, and a baseball player. We'll start with the baseball player. John Hiller is a pitcher who spent his entire career with the Detroit Tigers. He had success as a starting pitcher and even more as a reliever. He was part of the Tigers World Championship team and also appeared in the All-Star game. We covered a lot in our interview, including the fact that he served the Tigers as both a starting and relief pitcher.
Mostly in the 70s, I became more of a closer, and every once in a while, manager would come to me and say, "We need a starter, do you mind starting?" And I just always enjoyed playing the game. And, I think I preferred starting, Don, because every day I went to the ballpark, I knew I had a chance of getting in. Right. And nowadays, being an every fifth day starter, I don't know what I do for 4 days in between, but I enjoyed the fact that I had a chance of getting in the ball game every day.
You had a record for a while of an American League record of 17 relief wins, which is pretty unusual for a relief pitcher to get wins. Saves, yes, but how did that come about?
Well, a lot of it, you know, you didn't mention the bad end. I had 14 losses out of the bullpen. I had 31 decisions in the bullpen. None of those were starting decisions, and I think that's a record that won't be broken. Some of it was good. I used to come in maybe in the 7th inning, a lot of times with men on base, and we didn't have a very good team that year. And sometimes I blew a lead, sometimes I'd go in and pitch a couple innings and the team would get a run and I'd get a victory. But when you have 14 losses, what happened at the end, the American League record was 18. 17 for the American League. I mean, the Major League record itself was 18. So Ralph Houk, I think I only had about 8 losses. And Ralph Houk came to me and said, when we get a tie ball game late in the game, I'm going to put you in, give you a chance maybe to make a new Major League record. Well, it backfired. I ended up getting more losses. So, but that's why I got so many decisions. I think the year we won the World Series, my base salary was $6,500. And we got $10 per diem. We did make $8,000 for winning the World Series. You know, last year they made $500,000 each for winning it, and you know, but the price of the tickets. I've got my stub from my World Series ticket. It was $12 for a box seat. So and you know, everybody will knock the salaries, and I do too. It's just gotten to a ridiculous. But all sports and all facets of life is the salaries are just getting outrageous, and I don't see where it's going to start. Stop rather. It's unbelievable.
Do you think it's changing the game?
Well, yes, definitely. That's what's made it go to 5-man rotation. That's made it go to pitch count. Everybody's worried about their multi-million-dollar player getting hurt, and the agents, you know, every year their players in the big leagues, they get bonuses and they make money, so they try to protect them and don't want them to pitch extra number of days or extra number of innings in a year. So money's changed the game totally. And I think the players, you know, and I don't want to be the old guy that, well, when we did it and how we did it our way, but we didn't take the game as serious, or we didn't take ourselves as serious. You're out there, I used to kid, I said the people in the stands are making more money than we are. And now, of course, it's a different way, but they take themselves too serious, pounding on their chest when they make an out or get a hit and taking curtain calls. And the game has changed, and the way the players approach the game, I think, has totally changed.
Did you even have pitch counts back when?
Oh, of course not. And when I went to be a pitching coach, they were just starting, and I'd put in a false number at the end of my report just because I was supposed to, but I always felt I could, you know, the hitters are going to tell me when I'm getting tired, they're going to start hitting the ball hard, and no, I was never in a favor of pitch counts.
Talking about pitching, Victor Martinez said something similar to what I'm going to say. I'm not even paraphrasing, but that basically when you're facing a good pitcher, you're just looking for him to make a mistake. Does that? I
think so, yeah. Al Kaline used to tell me he felt that he was going to get one pitch to hit at each at-bat. Now, sometimes that's new, but overall, throughout the year, he's going to get one pitch to hit, and just be ready for that pitch and look for it. You know, Victor is so intent. And it seems like he will put the ball in play most of the times, and he's looking for that one location. I think the good hitters look location, inside, outside, maybe up and down, where your average hitters are looking maybe guessing fastball, guessing curveball, but your good hitters are going to guess location. How's he going to try and get me out?
So it's kind of a cat and mouse game.
It is. It is. You'll see pitchers that throw 89, 90 miles an hour fastball, but their location is so good, and they know how to set up a hitter and know how to pitch opposite. You know, if your hitter's expecting a fastball and you're throwing an off speed, you're going to get him out. So it's just really trying to outthink that hitter.
You had 87 wins, 125 saves, career ERA of 2.83, which is very good. What was the key to your success?
I don't think I was ever afraid of losing. I used to, when I was coaching, I tell these kids, they come out of high school, come out of their area, they've maybe never lost a ball game or never been hit hard. And I always said, you can't be afraid. I never was a nibbler, get 2 strikes and then try and nibble and nibble and nibble. I came after the hitter. Eddie Matthews, great Hall of Famer, he joined us in '67, I believe. He said something one day to somebody, and he said, Hiller has more heart than he has talent. And maybe that was true. I went out there, gave it all I had, but I was not afraid of losing. And so I challenged the hitters maybe a little more than what some guys do nowadays. I did have real good control in and out, and I had an average fastball, a very average curveball, but I did end up with above average changeup late in my career, and in a way that turned it around.
That throwing strikes is important. Every time we get a reliever come in the 9th and walk the leadoff batter.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I know.
Me up the wall.
I know.
Who was the toughest batter you ever faced?
I've got 2, George Brett and Rod Carew, those 2. Left-handed hitters that could go out and hit. I'm a left-handed, of course, but they could go out and smack the ball the other way, or they could turn on it inside. So those 2 gave me fits. And Lou Piniella was a right-hander that just sort of made a career on hitting left-handers, and those 3 gave me a lot of trouble.
Other than yourself, who was the greatest pitcher that you think you saw?
Bob Gibson in my era, I would believe so. Yeah, he was just phenomenal. The year we went in the World Series with him, I think his ERA was 1.28 for a starter. That's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. I really enjoyed getting to meet and talk with John Hiller. He has a lot of baseball memories to share with us. Next up, we'll talk with a very successful UP businessman. The Jacquard Fabric Products started out in 1958 as a small storefront cut and sew business. The company has grown into a very successful 80,000 square foot manufacturing facility. The man who led the way for this ironwood-based business is Bob Jacquard. While the company has been successful with a number of different products, they reached a new level when they took over the legendary Stormy Kromer line. I asked Jacquard, who is Stormy Kromer?
Who was Stormy Kromer? A railroad engineer who worked for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad and loved baseball, and found that there were times when he needed a hat with ear flaps and a brim, and there was nothing actually made back then that had a brim to shade the sun and ear flaps to keep your ears warm. So he asked his wife Ida to put ear flaps on a baseball hat. And there's a whole history. We could spend 20 minutes just talking about Stormy Kromer. That's basically who he was. He wore the hat the next day to the railroad yard, and someone asked him for one just like it, and he went home and his wife made a dozen, and he sold a dozen, and branched off from the railroad into the Kromer Cap Company.
And it eventually went out of business. And you brought it back to life?
Yes, and so I'm the 3rd owner of Stormy Kromer. So Stormy sold it in 1964 to a guy named Dick Grossman, and then in 2001, Dick was making 2 product lines, basically, and he decided to quit making the winter hat, which we call the Stormy Kromer hat now, because the only market he had for that hat was the Upper Peninsula in northern Wisconsin. And so our local dealer called in the order to restock for this next year for him in 2001, and they said, I'm sorry, we're not making them anymore. We discontinued. We haven't made them for a year. Last year you didn't know it, but we were using up our stock.
Yeah.
And so he found me in a coffee shop that dealer phoned me in a copy shop that day and said, they quit making Stormy Kromer hats, you better do something about it. And I smiled at him and said, get me the number, I'll buy the company. And when those words came out of my mouth, I said to myself, yeah, right, Bob, you're going to do that. And
but this has to be one of the biggest moves in your career with your company.
oh, for sure. And you know, they say we're smart and all that stuff. This was just a reactionary, this would be fun to own this company. And then we've had some wonderful things happen to get us launched. We got real good visibility early on by the Milwaukee Journal. They wrote a tremendous article. I was the front page of the Sunday paper for the Journal, and that just kind of put us into a nice trajectory of growth that we've been able to maintain.
And this was the first time you really had to get into big-time sales and marketing.
Absolutely. You're, you know, good research on your part, because up until then we had been making things for other people mainly. So let the other company would market it, and all we had to do was fulfill their orders. So now we had to market. And I guess the best thing about that was I knew I didn't know anything about marketing, retail marketing. So I went looking for help and got some really good advice early on. Was able to hire a couple of marketing companies outside of the area. I went to Milwaukee actually because I thought I could tie in with the existing theme of where it came from, Milwaukee. So I started in Milwaukee and used marketing companies, and of course outside marketing has been the whole theme of this thing and how to grow it. And we've had really good successes. I've had some good luck, good successes. Big companies took us on early, which was a surprise to everybody that was watching. Cabela's took us on really early. LL Bean, for example, you'll see a winter catalog of theirs, and there'll be 5 non-LL Bean products in the catalog, and one of them is Stormy Kromer. I mean, they make their own. They sew, they make their own boots, they make their own dog beds, they make their own everything, clothes, hats, but they love our brand, and they love partnering with us. So that all happened, and then 6 years ago, our oldest daughter came back to work with her sister, who was our youngest daughter runs our pet department, and our oldest daughter came back from Dallas after being gone for 12 years. So Gina came back and took over the whole marketing and she's the president of Stormy Kromer now. It's her baby now, and she just gets it. I mean, it was the perfect handoff from an entrepreneurial, let's buy this company and do something with it sort of guy.
And the guy who likes to sew things.
Yeah, and we can make this, we can make hats, we can learn how to sew a brim, and we can learn how to do ear flaps, but how do you implement it, how do you produce it really well, and how do you market and stay focused on the theme of retail.
And you've really taken it to a whole new level. You have a whole line of Stormy Kromer clothing products.
Yeah, the demand got great enough to the stores asked for a bigger imprint on their floor, and so you take Getz's and Surplus Outlet that are big dealers for us in the area, and they had enough demand for the brand that they said you should bring us more products that have this Stormy Kromer brand on it. So that's worked out really, really well for us. We've had shirts and hats, and we make even clothing. We even make clothing for beer. We make beer can covers, and so it's been a great thing that we've been able to stay genuine, market through the heritage brand of Stormy Kromer being a 1903 product, and be legendary and try to stay true. And we keep working. Every year or so we tweak exactly where we're going. There's lots of competition. There's people that look just like us that fake making it in America and those kinds of things, and so there's a lot to maintaining a focus there.
Bob Jacquard is a very successful businessman and also a very nice guy. Really enjoyed talking with him. I'll be back to talk about history and beer in just 2 minutes. Well, Russ Manyagi is a pretty fascinating guy. He's a longtime history professor at NMU, but he's more than that. He's been a UP historian. We had a chance to sit down and talk with Russ Manyagi about a lot of things, including beer. Here's part of that conversation.
The microbreweries that have developed, and we had 13 when I started writing the book last year, and by the time I got done, we had another 4.
When we go back in the earlier history, back in that middle 1800s period, a lot of the people who came here came from Germany and settled in this area originally to work in the mines, but many of them then, according to your book, went off and opened their own breweries and were fairly successful. Is that the story?
Yeah, in the 19th century, there were breweries. The Copper Country had the largest number of them, at least a half dozen, and they would pop up in different communities. Marquette had one, the old castle structure that was west of town, and they were all German brewers. And what's interesting, I found that the first German brewer was Nicholas Volker, the grandfather of John Volker.
Okay.
And he and two associates, started making beer at Sault Ste. Marie in 1850. And then they moved to the Copper Country, opened up breweries there, and then as Germans arrived, many of them got into brewing.
I don't think we think of the Copper Country as a place particularly known for brewing, but there were some breweries that did very well. Haas Brewery, I think, was one that's written up in your book, and
Correct.
of course the Busch Brewing Company, or Bosch.
Or Bosch, yes.
I do remember the old commercials on TV6 at one time that said, "Busch or Bosch, we all agree, best beer in the whole UP."
Correct.
So,
Yep.
but kind of trace the history of how those companies. Well, and one of the big concerns, of course, was Prohibition. They were doing well, and then Prohibition came along, and many of them went out of business permanently.
Right. The brewery started, as I said, in 1850, and then just took off after that. And then everything was going along very well until Prohibition came, and that was May 1st, 1918. And Michigan got into Prohibition before national Prohibition. And everything shut down, and the breweries then became soda companies making bottled soda water and whatnot. And the whole brewing industry died, and then at the end of Prohibition, some of the breweries got back into business, but they didn't have the advertising ability and the funds and so on, and so they were pretty much squeezed out. I think the last two were Haas and Bosch. And I think Bosch went out in the 1970s. That was kind of the end of it. Then it was about 25 years before 1994, and we get the first brewery in the UP.
I noticed in your book that Michigan almost went dry earlier. They had a vote in 1877, and it came very close to passing. So,
yes.
So Michigan could have been a dry state long before
And
Prohibition came along.
and with some of those votes, the Upper Peninsula kept the state wet.
Okay.
And it was pretty much the Upper Peninsula counties. At that time, we had a very, very large ethnic population, and the Germans and beer, Italians and others with wine, and so there was it was just part of the local culture. So when you all of a sudden told people to give up this culture, they voted to stay wet.
The whole trend now toward the microbreweries and brew pubs really started in the 70s, 80s, in that period?
It began in the UP. It began in 1994. Heffernan Hops down in Escanaba. They were the first brew pub. And then the Verling here in Marquette, Terry Doyle started soon after. Some of these started within months of each other, and then the brewery in Grand Marais. Those were the first three that came about in the 90s. And then the other breweries that have come on have been a more recent vintage.
And I picked up in your book that Michigan is now 5th in the nation in microbreweries with 150.
Correct.
So,
and it's, there's kind of an ongoing debate with the state of Colorado. They're upset with Michigan being number 5, and they want to be number 5. And so there's a lot of sparring that goes on as to who's up there.
well, this morning our conversation with Dr. Miyagi was about beer, but he knows a lot more about UP history. He's written a number of books. If you're interested, you ought to check them out. Back with more in just 2 minutes. I want to talk about a movie this morning, but I also want to assure you I won't be regularly doing movie reviews. There's a good possibility my thoughts on the movies are generally not aligned with the current generation of theater goers. Case in point is a fairly recent movie called Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. According to the movie's promotional material, fearing that the actions of Superman are left unchecked, Batman takes on the Man of Steel, while the world wrestles with what kind of hero it really needs. It's likely the millennial generation won't agree with my thoughts on this pick, but in my world, Batman and Superman could never be enemies, not even for a little while. After all, they're the two of the greatest heroes we've had, and they've stood for justice from their very beginning. Now, at this point, you're probably saying, doesn't he know this isn't real? This is not real life? I understand this is fiction, and it's not real, but some movie characters take on a life of their own, and Batman and Superman are certainly American superheroes. It all began to change when the dynamic duo led by Adam West vanished from the scene, and Michael Keaton showed up as the new Caped Crusader. I enjoy Michael Keaton as an actor, but not only did we have a new Batman, we had a totally new character. Gone was the lighthearted and, yes, sometimes corny, almost comic crime-fighting adventures, and they were replaced by a more somber character in stories with a darker tone. And of course, the new version of Batman remained, as he was later portrayed by Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, Will Arnett, who actually brought some fun and a lighter side back to the character, and of course now Ben Affleck. It's not just Batman. Superman has also changed over the years, as have other superhero characters. It seems today we make a lot less movies to make us laugh and a lot more on the dark side. Some of the best movies coming out of Hollywood are animated features for kids, young and old. I know there are many who enjoy Batman as he's portrayed today, and that's okay. But for me, the long-running Batman series with Adam West and Burt Ward was a combination of crime fighting and tongue-in-cheek comedy that I really enjoyed. And every once in a while, as I'm surfing through the channels on my TV set, I'll come across one of those episodes, and I always stop, at least for a little while. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Time to wrap it up for another week. Keep in mind, you can also catch us on the internet at uppermichigansource.com, the place to find all the latest Upper Michigan news, sports, and weather. Thanks for joining us today. I hope we can look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.